Audience First, a podcast for tech marketers looking to break out of the echo chamber to better understand their audience and turn them into loyal customers. Every week, Danny Wolf has brutally honest conversations with busy tech buyers about what really motivates them, the things they hate that vendors do, and what you can do about it. Get access to practical information on how to build authentic relationships with your audience. Listen to and talk with your buyers, and apply real customer insights to your strategies and tactics. You owe it to the world to unmute your mic. Are you ready?
All right, welcome to another episode of Audience First. Today is a very special episode. Why? Because I have two special people on the call. I have Dmitriy Sokolovskiy, who is not a stranger to Audience First, and I have TJ Gonen. So, Dmitry, tell me, who are you, what do you do, and why the hell do you do it?
I am the CISO and the CSO at Avid Technology. That's my daytime job. Corporate security as a CISO, product security as the CSO. And on the weekends and nights and the mornings and whenever, I'm also the principal advisor and lead instructor for Audience First.
There you go. TJ, back at you.
Hold on.
Why?
Why
Yeah.
I do it? Because the world needs it. Because the world needs it. We need to save everyone. And this is what I go to sleep with every night, that thought.
I love it. TJ, right back at you. Who are you? What do you do? And why the hell do you do it?
So TJ, I'm the vice president for cloud security at Checkpoint. So I run the cloud security business at Checkpoint. And I do a lot of other things in my spare time, but mostly kids, wife. And I do what I do because I like building stuff and solving problems. Way less important. Your stuff sounded way more important, Dmitry.
No way. I can't do it without you. I mean, we need people that build it, and so that we can use it for protection. Right. That's the only way it works.
True. That's true.
So, TJ, tell me a little bit about your role. What keeps you up at night?
So the cloud security business at Checkpoint started dealing with cloud security quite a few years ago, 5-6 years ago, obviously, as cloud started to get momentum. Bunch of acquisitions, as you would expect from companies in the cybersecurity space. Actually, that's how I found myself at Checkpoint. Checkpoint acquired my company in the cloud security space a few years ago. And a year ago, we decided that it's important enough and big enough to actually build a business unit around it. So we took the business as a whole, sales, product, marketing, engineering, and put it under a P&L and a business unit. So that's how it's run right now at Checkpoint. And I run that business. What keeps me up at night, I mean, beyond the usual, as you would expect, like meeting business objectives, which is obviously very important as part of our day job, is I think keeping up. Just generally speaking, keeping up. I would say, if anything, if I had to summarize, generally speaking, what keeps me up at night is keeping up. And I think for Dmitry, it's probably just the same. And cloud security and cloud, just generally, the speed, the pace we call it the 100 times problem. Everything is just 100 times bigger, 100 times faster, 100 times more spread around. So that's what keeps me up at night. Just finding better ways, more efficient ways to keep up with the pace of change. That's the number one hard thing on my agenda.
Dima, does that resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is exactly what I just talked about, that we need people like TJ to do this 24/7, because I can't. CISO cannot even try to keep up with everything. We barely touch the very, very tops of the keep up. We need the vendors to do that initial digestion of technology. And so it's always like this, right? There's a science that really, really, really beginning of some new innovation, but it has to become real before we, on the business side, can start deploying it to make our companies more secure. So while I had to fight myself to get rid of this FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. Continuous. Oh, wow, there's this new thing came out. What do I know? And I need to spend like 3 days reading into it. And then I realized that in those 3 days, I have 600 emails in my inbox that I haven't touched. Well, that's a problem, right? So, I guess I can't do that. And so I had to really like wean myself off of this. I can't. And so instead, what I do is, I had this problem with my procurement team. They're like, why do you have so many POCs and POVs? Well, that's how I learn. I get a vendor to come in and distill what they've spent a week or a month or a year going through into hopefully something that's business ready, valuable to me to deploy. And so I try to pick up as much as I can technically, from those presentations. But that's a big part of why we do it, because we need to learn as well. And people at TJ help us.
Yeah. I want to kind of go down this rabbit hole that's not necessarily part of our talking track here that we prepared
as usual,
prior to the call,
shocker.
As usual. But TJ, you said that what keeps you up is keeping up with the fast pace and the pace of change. What are kind of some systematic ways that you prepare for that, or keep up, or reach those, kind of bridge those gaps in order to help those folks like Dmitriy, the buyers, keep up?
So I think the biggest thing for us that worked, and I can tell you, like, I personally did tons of experiments trying to keep up, and I have the 50 rule, which means 50% of them fail at least. And then the 50% that were successful, or at least semi-successful, all lead up to one thing that you need to try. I mean, you might fail, predict 2 to 3 years from now, and try to figure out how do you work backwards. So I call this, so again, not trademark, but I use it all the time. I call it 1, 3, 2. 1 is where we are, 3 is where we think we're going to go, and 2 is how we get there. And you find out that most of us during our life, we do 1, 2, 3. And then 3 is just a bunch of 2s. It's a random bunch of 2s when you do 1, 2, 3. And 1, 3, 2 says, okay, I think here's where I am right now. Here's where Dmitriy is right now in his journey to the cloud. For example, in my world today, it's to the cloud. But what does that mean? He's going to adopt stuff. He's going to start with lift and shift. Then he's going to go cloud native. Then he's going to give power to these developers. And trust me, they're going to go ape shit, and they're going to go all over the place. And the barbarians are going to go to be at the gate, White Walkers with dragons, like fires all over the place. Dmitry is going to lose his power to say no very, very soon, by the way. He's going to lose, if he didn't lose it already. And then he's going to deal there with like 100,000 different things happening in the air. And he's going to have visibility problems he never had. Anyway, so I'm trying to describe sort of the landing spot. And then how do you work backwards to understand that 3 is an aspiration? There's no one that's going to give Dmitry 3 today, because by definition, 3 is in X from now. So, and then what are the 2s together? So I think the only way to actually keep up is to understand that you can't fully keep up, right? And to have a sort of, where do you think it's going to land, work backwards, and have milestones that are, and I think, Dmitry, I really connect to what you said around running 1 billion POVs in order to understand what's going on and what actually drives value. Not just as a technology, as a thing. So similar, like almost the reverse of what Dmitry is doing with POVs. What can we do as a series of 2s? So value is driven, you learn, and you get to a 3. And unfortunately, once you get to a 3, you need to get to another 3.
Right, exactly. Well, as soon as you're closing in on a 3, you already have to be doing the next 1, 3. Now as 3 is a 1.
Exactly, a 3 becomes a 1. It's a cycle, right? A 3 becomes a 1.
I just learned something, by the way.
Okay, cool, yeah. Because I think most of the with life, right? I try to say this to my kids all the time, and I have older kids now. So just visualize the landing spot. And then what are the series of actions? Because otherwise, literally, a 3 is just a bunch of 2s. And that's most of people around us. You look at it, 3 is just a bunch of 2s. Random bunch of 2s. Anyway. So that's
1, 3, 2. I'm going to use it in the next class, Danny.
I was going to say, I feel like you had. I'm sorry?
A license for use. Yeah, exactly. No, that's so. What TJ is talking about is strategic planning. That's what that is, right? You have to visualize the end goal and then build it backwards. Amazon has that term, build it backwards. Right. So they're built like, okay, this is where we want to be. Okay, how do we get from there to here? And many people, including most CISOs, have very hard time strategically planning because it's so difficult to step outside of the 1 and step outside of the immediate 2 to think of where the 3 is going to be. And that's very, very difficult. And that's, again, what the vendors can help us with. We are in 1s, trying to get to 2s, and the vendor is there with a bunch of 3s that we might choose from to get to. In many ways, the vendors are like the science fiction of the 60s and the 50s, where they were coming up with the flip phones. It was first in science fiction, and then it made it into real world.
the Isaac Asimov. I actually think, Dmitry and Danny, that I find out, because I've been thinking 132 for, I don't know what, 15 years now. It's funny, but you're right that theoretically you would, like, your immediate guess would be that people have a hard time sitting down and defining 3. I find a lot of people even having a hard time figuring out 1. Like trying to give an honest, unbiased, realistic opinion of where I am right now, what's working and not working. You know, Amazon, you talked about Amazon, so I love it. By the way, for everyone listening to this show, Working Backwards, the Amazon book that you were referring to, brilliant. So there's another method in the AWS Amazon work, which they call start, stop, continue, right? Beginning of every year, start, stop, continue. What should we start new, fresh? What should we stop doing? What should we continue doing of what we're doing right now? Similar thing, that's the one. Start, stop, continue. And it's people I do this with my team in my business unit. I'm telling you, it's so hard for people to even say out loud what sucks right now. Or what's working or what's not working. It's even 1 is hard. Forget 3, right? 1 is hard.
I know, right? It's still 1 more. Start, stop, continue. That's a new one.
Yeah.
TJ said that many people have a hard time defining the 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, TJ, it's actually, people don't operate in the 1. People most of the time are in a 0. 0 is right, the immediate circle around yourself, right? So 1 requires you to pause from doing the 0 and actually look where you're standing. That's a conscious effort that many people, I mean, in most places, most cases, the way you see what you're doing and what you're feeling is not the same as you making a conscious effort to assess what is it that you are, where you are, and what you're doing. So that alone is difficult in any environment, any situation. If you're operating a complex business, a lot of technology based on a lot of different connections, et cetera, all that running on-prem, the old school way was very complex. And that was very difficult to get a 1, right? You're in that 0, very difficult to even stop, look at a 1, never mind, think of a 2 and a 3. Of course, the cloud comes along and it was like, wow, it's amazing. It's going to make it so much easier. I'm sorry, what is it going to make easier? Is it going to make it easier on a 0? Well, for sure, it's only another 500 different things that we're going to have to deal with. Okay, so I guess it's not making the 0 much easier. Okay, well, about the 1? Well, there's now 1,500 other things and places you can run things in, and they're mostly turned on by default. So you can totally completely ignore it and get 5 1s where you only think of 1 1. Okay, I guess that's not making it easier either. But by then, again, to TJ's point, we got a bunch of developers running blindly into the cloud, and by the time you get any idea on your own 0 and a 1, they're already building a 2 and a 3. What is going on? Where are you people? Come back! It's way too late. What? I got it. And of course, the AWSs of the world didn't make it easier because again, everything is turned on by default. If you're running a subscription and US East is what you think, 13 others are turned on by default. You don't even know your Germany's online. You don't even know your Germany by default had any open. And then those were the beginning days. And S3 buckets were just turned on and public to the internet. No one knew that. And no one was told that. No one even knew to ask. Speaking of 1 and a 0, even if you know that you stop and start looking, you couldn't tell. I'm not sure if TJ is from the company that I'm thinking of, but back in the day, about the same time as Checkpoint started the cloud journey, they bought a company called Dome9. I don't know if TJ, is that where you're from?
No, I'm from the next acquisition after Dome9, but Dome9 is part of me now. Yeah, I have.
Okay, so you're right. So they were in their really early startup stages, and they were doing a POC for us when I was at Cyber.
Really?
Yeah, and so what they gave me in the first run was that alone. They gave me the 12 or whatever subscriptions we had turned on that we didn't know about, meaning the locations were turned on in other places. And in fact, one of them had a minor mining station operating on it that someone started up without us knowing. There was a small trickle of use, and we're like, where is that? There's no one in Germany. Why are we losing? Why is money going there? We started looking, there's micro machines, and that blew my mind. And then Dome9 showed me this visualization of, this is my resource pool, and through this weird chain of connections, it's facing outside.
Clarity. We called it
clarity, right? So cloud brings with it what clouds normally bring with them: fog, a lot of stuff happening, not much understanding, cold. Everyone is weird, just mood dropping, right? Like that's the cloud. Yeah, but so that makes it more difficult. It makes it more difficult to understand my one, to understand my zero, and rolling this back to the risk. Where our job is, I keep making fun of it. It's not cybersecurity. It's cyber. They call it now cyber resilience, right? Or cyber something like cyber resilience or complexity management or risk management. That's really the only way to quantify what's stopping the business, or what can slow down the business, or what can negatively impact the business in achieving its goals anywhere, in anything. And so, of course, business thinks cloud is the way to save money and do things better. Great. But right from the beginning, it becomes more expensive and more risky. And IBM studied the DBIR from Verizon. They're all pointing the same thing. In the first 2-3 years of your cloud migration, you are in more risk, a lot more risk, simply because of more of everything and less control, less understanding, more uncertainty, more complexity, higher risk. And so cloud is amazing. It can be good if it's done correctly, but right from the beginning, it creates a lot of headaches, and we have to get used to this and know what we're doing. And TJ and companies like Checkpoint concentrating their efforts in that space is one of the best tools we have to improving the situation. We can't do it ourselves.
Yeah.
So TJ, take me through some of that. I'm sorry, all you wanted to add on some.
Yeah, I was just going to say by the way, Dmitry loved the poetry with clouds and doom, gloomy and stuff. I never used that before. I'm gonna take advantage of it. I think what we as security professionals sometimes find it hard to sort of absorb the notion is that the cloud was not designed for us. This is not for us. It was by definition designed for developers by AWS 100%. That's how they build their business. Everything is for the builders, the developers, and it was designed for them. And not only for them, the real value of the cloud, and I actually just read an article today about companies migrating off cloud to on-prem for data analytics because it's just way too expensive in the cloud. It's not cost saving on dollars compute. It's speed. It was designed, everything by definition was so developers can develop more stuff faster. That's what it was. Now, by definition, for us security people, once you say develop more stuff, deploy more stuff faster, someone is looking for his heart pacer, right? Because he's gonna get a heart attack. So it's almost like the antichrist of security, everything that's happening in the cloud. And Amazon launched last year, I think 1,300 new services. That's a scale of a problem we as security professionals never had to deal with. The on-prem world never had even close to that, right?
And AWS goes and says, okay, we got everything covered. You can codify everything and control it. Well, that's great. If I put the semicolon in the wrong place in my IAM policy, instead of closing everything, I am allowing everything.
You're allowing everything. And the developer goes, and I think we have some sort of a cynical view as security professionals of the developers. It's not like, they just go like, and I use this term barbarians, a lot of the times barbarians at the gate, because it's true, but it's not like they don't care. Their job is to move fast, and the cloud allows them to move fast. And we, by definition, lose that control, which we had on-prem just because things had so much friction. And there's zero friction in the cloud. To your point, you want to deploy something, you deploy a data center with 2 scripts. You use 500 new services in 1 script, right? You're just up in the air. So anyway, I think for us as security professionals, one thing is to embrace that the old world is gone. I sat with a customer last week, and literally she said to me, it's very interesting. She said, "Man, I miss the time developers needed me to open a port, to open something for them, to close something they just go, and they enable everything with a script, and they just go at it, right?" So that time is gone. We have to adapt to new ways. And to your point around domain and visibility and observability and tools, we need to understand that whatever tool we develop has to allow them to move faster. Because if we slow them down, they're just going to go around. There's no way to slow down. That's done.
I can imagine, though, that with that speed, to your point, there is complexity.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that there are some security professionals that are moving away from the cloud because of that, and because of the risk that's posed from the cloud?
I mean, I'll be interested to hear what Dmitriy sees in his circles, but I think that battle is lost. I don't think you can stop anyone from, unless you are super like the big financial organizations with compliance. I see slower movement, but even them, all of them have plans within X years to be totally out of the data center business. I don't think you can slow anyone. I think that battle.
There's just too much value in moving to the cloud. Now, the speed, elasticity, flexibility, ability to spool up and spool down on a dime, all those things are massively important. Geopolitical resiliency. I mean, you can go on and on. So, no, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that, and this is where we go back again to the problem of the naming of the industry, cybersecurity and security in general. When we say it like that, it makes it sound like we are trying to secure an insecure way of someone doing something, which technically is the case, right? Like this is why we're having the problems we're having, because the only way to secure is to lock down. And lockdown inevitably is a loss of functionality, loss of speed, loss of a lot of different things. And so, again, not surprisingly, everyone is against it. And we are the roadblock and so on, right? So that's not, but that's all we had. If we start looking at the same cloud deployments and the way the developers do things, the reason why things are insecure when they're finished is because they are not clean enough, too complex, too many connections, too much attempted, not enough described and documented. That's not a security problem, but we are attempting to solve it with a security solution. And that's why we continuously run into the headbutting between the barbarians and the Romans, right? We're trying to nail this nail with a tank. They weren't designed for this. And again, this is where both the security personnel and the vendors are starting to work together on, and this is what we're seeing, the seismic shift, to paraphrase someone yesterday on LinkedIn. The seismic shift in the industry is happening. Equifax CISO, Jamil, I think I forgot his full name, but he was the one that mentioned it, seismic shift. We are moving away from let's lock it down to let's simplify it. Let's explain it, understand it, and make it better, cheaper, simpler. We are trying to reduce complexity. We're trying to reduce uncertainty. And in the cloud, it's actually a lot easier to accomplish, a lot more flexibility to simplify, a lot more ways to massively descope something without losing a lot of functionality. Those 1,300 services AWS rolls out, it's not because there's 1,300 completely new ways of doing things. No, those are just slightly more adjusted, shifted, moved around, turned whatever, services designed to do something specific, simpler, better, faster, right? And so if we can marry that into the day-to-day of the barbarians, of the developers, they'll do it because it's actually better. This is what developers are always good at, and then I found at Avid. When you put the problem in front of them, they're good people. They will want to fix it. They are trying. As soon as they realize that something can be done better, simpler, they will do it. In fact, they will chase you to get it done. And so then I come back to, we've been doing it all wrong from the beginning. Instead of trying to understand what they're doing, trying to simplify their tool set, trying to simplify their capabilities, we are in fact making them more complex with the security controls and everything else we're placing on top of them. So no, I don't see shifting away from the cloud. I'm starting to see a lot more codification of things, which allows for standardization, allows for easier testing, and so on, leading to what I hope is the utopian world of not needing a security team. Because security, in my mind, is when the business is able to do what it wants to do, nothing but what it wants to do, and can verify at any given time that's the only thing that is happening, what the business wants to do.
I think it's interesting, Dima, there's the real problem is, and I think this developer versus security people, the way that you just described it, we need to understand that, and I think you outlined this perfectly, but just to oversimplify this, as long as we make it harder to do the right thing, people will do the wrong thing. I like to give this example. We grew up in Israel, right? And I don't know, Danny, you're young, but I can tell you I'm old enough to have pirated every freaking movie on the planet, right? Emu, BitTorrent, Napster, pirated the shit out of everything, right? You know when I stopped? When it became easier to do the right thing. When it became
cheaper to just get Netflix or AWS.
Exactly. Became easier to do the right thing. Once we, our job, and this is, I agree with you, Dima, 100%, like our job is to make it easier for them to do the right thing. Talk their language, integrate with their tool, automate stuff. So I'll give an example in a second, which you referred to before as far as IAM identities as an example. But if we make it easier to do the right thing, they do the right thing. As long as we put roadblocks, make it complex, send them all sorts of remediation action. You're giving this example, right? Oh, you deployed this 2 months ago? By the way, it's misconfigured and you have 4 vulnerabilities. How about you deploy this again? Dude, I deployed this 2 months ago. I don't even remember what I did yesterday. Now you want me to go back, find my problem, retest it, and deploy it again? I hate you. Screw you. Never talking to you again, right? So, for example, one of the things we did at my company, which is now part of my platform, of our platform, CloudGuard, is that we automated IAM creation. So we did it for serverless functions and containers. Basically, we gave you the idea which you would give us your code, your serverless code, your Lambda code, right? And we would automatically generate a least privilege IAM role. Think about it like a vending machine for least privilege IAM role. As a developer, all you need to do is give the code, boom, you get on the other side a least privilege IAM role that the Lambda only gets permission to do what its code allows it to do. Boom. A developer says, dude, that's much easier than you bugging me with, hey, you're over permissive and I need to fix stuff. So you made it simpler, people use it. Same thing. If we keep it simpler, people with if you want people to stop pirating stuff, you have to give them tools to do it easier the right way. That's the only way for the future. I agree. We are way too complex and post-fact and a lot of other stuff.
But by the way, what TJ just talked about, that would be if you didn't have this feature in your tool, Audience First Advisory would tell you to have a feature like this, because this way you can get rid of the security team. You don't need a security team anymore. Every vendor I talk to, I basically say, hey, how can I get you in touch with my business directly? Can you just tell them that something is wrong? I don't want to know. Right. Tell them what's wrong and tell them what you want to do to fix it. I don't want to be part of it. Nope, don't care.
Yeah.
It's a good conversation when you guys just naturally cover all the talking points and I don't have to interject at all. I love it. You're doing my job for me. Thank you very much. TJ, are there any questions or that you need answers to from Dmitry to kind of make your job easier or do your job better?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch, but I don't want to take 10 hours. I think, Dmitry, how do you look at this? I can tell you afterwards how I looked at this internally as a tool vendor or as a solution provider, how I look at this. But bridging this gap between your developers and you guys are a software company, so you have an army of barbarians, right? What changed in your approach to solving this bridge, building this bridge between the security team and the developers, definitely in the context of cloud? Let's say if I would ask you the same question 3 years ago, what you were doing and what you're doing now. Did your philosophy change? Did the tool set change? Did the approach change? Are you now more in collaboration? You're one big happy family? Or what's going on today versus 3 years ago?
I would say there are two major changes between what I thought was the way to do it 3-4 years ago and what I think, still don't know, like I'm not going to call it no, but think is the right way to do it today. So first, and this one I stole directly from BSIM. So BSIM is it's a framework on secure development lifecycle, but it's started by Synopsys, another vendor, and there is an open source variant called SAM, Software Assurance Maturity Model. It's a prescriptive methodology from beginning to end of the whole security development lifecycle, covering all the components. They both talk about it slightly differently, but both are referring to what BSIM calls satellites. So there is the product security team, the actual primary core team, and they both, again, provide some ratios to how many of those people should you have comparing to the number of developers you have. So like a rough starting number is one product security person to 100 developers, plus minus. If you're really well funded, you could be 1 to 50 for, let's say, maybe even something like that. But what they also say is that, let's say you have 500 developers, so it makes it 5-people team, but that's not enough. 5 to 500, that's still a lot. So what they're saying is that in addition to the core, you have to have satellites. Satellites are otherwise known as champions or your points of code, whatever you want to call them. But they are developers who show an affinity to security things. Let's put a just description of, if they ask the question, if they show any interest, you tag them, you give them a badge and you say, that's it. I deputize you. You're now a satellite. You're now an official or unofficial security person. And now I have 20 some satellites. We call them product security owners. They're provided by the business. We ask the business to give us these people that would represent their units with us. And so we have a weekly even meeting with them and us. And they are the people to whom we go with questions and concerns and so on. And it's now becoming a collaborative effort. Right. So core, satellites, and only then the team. And now the team has conversations internally with the satellite being the focal point for the conversation, not us. So instead of it being a security versus development conversation, it's now a developer with developer conversation about how to make things better, easier, faster. So that's one thing that started let's call it the positive shift. And the second was measurement. Right, we have to be able, like, first you give people authority or responsibility. Hey, business, you're responsible. We're not going to be responsible for security of the product. You are responsible for security of the product. But that doesn't have any weight unless you can back it up with some measurement and to actually specify how secure your product is. And we started doing that. We started measuring. And we started to provide the measurements to the business. And we did it in a number of ways using, the SAM or the BSIM, the assessment mechanisms, self-assessment. And then there are subjective ways that we then quantified. Like how well are you following secure development lifecycle? What's the rate of change? There's a number of different things.
Did you get sponsorship from engineering leadership to do that measurement? Like, how did
TJ is going in the right place. Of course, the problem there is that once security team introduces measurements, everyone on the development side says again, well, why this isn't like, what do I do with that? And this is where the support has to come in from the leadership, from the management. And I thought of the standard way of getting that support is to try and change their mind, trying to show them et cetera, et cetera. And I thought that we don't have that kind of time. So instead, I started simply reporting it to the board.
Oh, there you go.
Without asking anyone. Okay. So I just told them, I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to report it to the board. And I don't have to say anything else. Because all I'm saying is, look, these are the numbers I see, and we're going to report them to the board. This is the date. And now we're starting to get
work together.
Participation. Hey, what's the number there? Well, what's causing it? Why is this number lower than that? And what I realize is that attention by someone whose opinion matters is the way to get it done. Now, whether you can do it through your actual management of the team, and we have a number of high-level development executives and managers that do care and are participating, but we need everyone. And the way to summarize it together and tie this is the super important part, tie it to the business objectives, revenue, protection of revenue, smart spending, and compliance. That can only be done at the board and E-team level. Right. And so the reporting of that, right? You build your support pool, you try and push the culture change up, but at the same time, show the accountability from the top down. So report the results and push the culture change from the bottom through the satellites. Those two things together, I think, had the biggest impact.
Yeah, I like the concept of the satellites, and I think that that's the right way. I can tell you, like, interestingly enough, like for us as a vendor, one of the things that we figured out quite fast, I want to say 2-3 years ago, is that we don't talk the language of developers. Like, we just don't talk the language. And I'll give you another term that I use internally, and I'll tell you how we tackled it. Most security companies build security tools that they think developers can use, right? Like all these sonotypes, all this stuff, like it's security people building tools for developers. We figured out when I took over, I said, dude, we know nothing about these people. Like, this is a different animal. They're wearing flip-flops. They have buggy shirts. They never take a shower. I do not understand these people. I don't know about the shower, but flip-flops 100%. But bottom line is that we said we need people who know how to build development tools that do security, not security tools for developers. And we acquired a company a year ago, a bit more than a year ago, because we said, I don't know how to build these tools. I just don't know how to build this bridge. The tools that work with your satellite and people can actually monitor and talk their language inside their flow. We just don't understand these people. So a year ago we went, and there's always like internal fight. No, what do you mean we don't know? Of course we know, but we built this. Dude, you don't know. People, you're building that. Show me a demo. And you know how to do this? Let me show you a dashboard. A dashboard to a developer. Congratulations. It's gonna throw up all over.
That's the end of your sale. Yeah, that's right.
So anyway, we acquired a company that built literally something that I, as a security person, I wouldn't know even how to turn this thing on. Like, it's all CLIs and integrates into their IDs and does everything in their language. It does security, but it looks like a developer tool. So anyway, I think your point about bridges, and from a tools perspective, it's the same thing. I think one of these things is to understand that we don't understand, right? We just don't understand. We need to do
that's your 0 and a 1. Exactly.
You're right. Yeah. It's to do that stuff. Yeah, it's interesting. So I think, so do you actually, in this process of building these satellites and having these bi-weekly meetings, are there part of your tooling and process definition also? Like, so when you guys go into a project of, let's say, securing the supply chain, the software supply chain, or code security, choosing processes or developing something yourself or buying a tool, are they part of that decision process?
So there are multi-part answer here. First, we looked at 5 different startups over the last 3 months, looking for a solution that would allow us to get a picture of the whole development life cycle and the security issues through that cycle. And every single tool, I had my team, my product security team, assess together with the satellites, and not a single one of them came back as useful. They all said, well, it's cute what they're doing, but it's not at all like what we do. So this is exactly echoing what you said. Yeah. And that echoed my experience again from CyberArk days, and now with every startup that I deal with. Product management may know a lot about theoretical security and knows nothing about
real life,
practical security, real life, whether it's corporate enterprise security, the infrastructure components, or development flow. The products developed looked nice. They have cute dashboards and really cool flows
and charts and colors, beautiful,
and not at all matching the reality of day-to-day developer life. That's like it's nailing. It's like, what am I supposed to do? None of this doesn't help me. I mean, if I make every one of my developers do this instead of what they do, maybe we can succeed if they get used to it. Blah. But that's not what's happening.
I think this gap, by the way, Dima, is when you talk with and you write about product managers, because they don't have operational experience, right? And I talk with my product managers all the time. How do you operationalize this? Stop building products for dashboards. How do people operationalize this? Understand the process. Like the first conversation with someone like yourself or your team would be, okay, tell me, how does your day look like? Once you find an alert, what do you do? How do you operationalize this?
No one asks this, right?
No one asks
this because they all have a tool to sell. Really cool, awesome looking tool. The technology is amazing. This is great. We're going to do this, yada, yada. And that's not accounting for what I have for people or what I have for process. And for me, building the InfoSec program starts at the top. What are the personnel resources I have and how good are they and whether they have any gaps? Do I have any processes to cover a particular gap? And this is what I tell when my team goes, all right, we're going to go look for a tool. I go, wait a second. Before you go look for a tool, assume that you have 1,000 people on your team. Just let's assume it for a second. And now I'm telling you, you can't buy any tools, but you can use a spreadsheet. So you have 1,000 people in a spreadsheet. How would you go about solving this problem manually?
Exactly.
And they're like, no, we do this, we do that. So like, okay, great. So now imagine you solve this problem manually. You got a process that involves 300 people. What tool would you bring to make it 30 people instead of 300, or 10 people instead of 300, or 5 or 201? And then you can go look for a tool. When you have people doing the process, if you don't have people, then why do we need a tool? I have no one doing this right now. Who's going to use this tool? No, okay. So if we have the people but no process, the tool is a crutch that's actually in more cases will cause damage, long-term damage to the 2 or the 3 that you're planning, because it makes you do things incorrectly. It helps you do the wrong thing better, faster. If the tool starts with, let me help you build a process that you will then use me for, that's a tool I look for. And again, today, most vendors don't understand that. We have to teach them that start with a process.
Yeah. And when it comes to the developer lifecycle, it's even worse, right? Because security people don't even understand. You talked about product managers. A typical security product manager has no clue what a developer goes through in his lifecycle. Or
despite having developers doing their work within the product themselves, no one looks at their own developers and says, "Hey, would this work?" Shocking.
Yes, it's very interesting. So I think one of the things, by the way, that we are looking and we're doing from a product perspective, I think it might be helpful also from your end as a process, as a thought process, we call it objective-based product. So don't show me the features. What is the flow, almost like the user story of the objective you're trying to achieve. So for example, if your objective is, to your point with the developers, is to reduce from 80 vulnerabilities to 40, right? So the objective is minimizing by 50%. So the 3 is for the product. Think about the product/process, that the objective is my starting point. Give me the 1. Okay, my starting point is 100. Objective is 50. Now give me the tools to get to a 50, right? Even 1, 3, 2 from a product perspective.
Walk me through.
You want to understand what does it take from a process perspective, though, right? You have to have the conversation.
And half the time, it's the process that's missing. You may already have necessary resources and tools even to do the work. What's missing is the process. And a lot of vendors will come in and say, well, we got a tool for you instead. Well, I already have a tool and it already sucks. Or I don't have a tool. I have people doing it and it sucks. And so you want me to bring additional complexity to what already sucks to make it better?
It's, to the point about the tools, it's sometimes these tools, you mentioned them, that they make it worse. They even make you feel worse. What good do I get from looking at a tool that says, hey, by the way, Dima, You have like 10,000 things that are broken. Dude, that's totally depressing. Like, doesn't help me.
That doesn't help me.
100%. Why? It's like my inbox in email. Danny knows it by now. I don't read emails because 99% of them are crap. I gave up. So it's like most of the times is like that. So I think part of the challenge, by the way, for us as vendors, for you as, like practitioners, is okay, don't tell me about 10,000. Tell me about, I know that there's 10,000. Tell me the 10
Show me that.
and his original risk management. Tell me the 10 that really, really matter. Let me solve 6 out of 10. Dude, I feel good. 60% out of what's important. I know it's 6% of everything you know, but I don't care because I can't solve 2,000. Give me the 10. Tell me how to fix it. Help me automate the process. Help me understand the process that I have right now, integrating my people, speak their language if they're developers. If I solve 6, this is what the industry is totally missing. Is that solving the 6 out of 10 important things is actually amazing. Letting me know that there's 1,000 things that are broken is actually just depresses the hell out of me. It doesn't help me at all.
So I'll take what you just said and add to it that 6 of 10, the most important ones, all that based on what is important to me and my business.
The business, of course.
Right, but most products I know today don't ask what's important to the business.
Yeah.
They tell me these are the criticals, these are the this is critical, high, medium, and low.
Right.
Well, why are these 10 critical? Well, it's because it's the critical vulnerability. Yeah, but they are in my test environment. I couldn't care less about it. But these 2 mediums over here are in the environment that's making me $4 million. That's more valuable, more important to me. But you didn't know that because you didn't ask me any questions.
I love this.
You should definitely, by the way, separately, I should show you what we're building, because literally what you're saying is like a product definition, and you're so right. Part of when we started building now what we call ERM, effective risk management, we said, okay, I get it. It's very easy to say if it's open to the internet and it has vulnerabilities and it has a lot of permissions to do harm, theoretically it's more important than something that's not exposed to the internet, doesn't have vulnerabilities. But if it sits in test, doesn't matter. Who cares, right? Or I care way less.
So we added important.
We added the questionnaire. We added the questionnaire that you can map out crown jewels and stuff like that, because you're right. And I think that, to your point, people think technology. They don't think process, environment, and context, right? What is my personalized context? And then I'll tell you even more than that. Don't tell me about stuff I can't remediate right now. Doesn't matter. Give me compensating controls. Don't give me remediation action I can take, because it just frustrates me. I'm just frustrated.
Give me options. By the way, Danny, I don't know. If TJ is not asking for a workshop, I don't know what he's doing right now, but that's exactly where this is exactly what.
This isn't the word. Okay, Danny, cut this out because it's not part of the contract. Side note, shameless plug.
Do a workshop. Shameless plug. Do a workshop. It wasn't it was on my radar anyway, so we should.
No, but what you just described is like you come to a CISO and you say, "Hey, is this useful?" And the CISO says, like, last week I got a dashboard. I got a dashboard demo. We have, 40 criticals, and this is what you should do. And I go, let's take a look. So I get a list of S3 buckets that are open to the public. The two at the top with criticals called test 1 and test 2. The 3 on the bottom that are mediums or highs, prod 1, prod 2, prod 3. And the bottom 3 have one high each.
Yes.
And then the top 2 have like 4 criticals each. And they're like, okay, so, click here. I'm like, wait. Why would I care? Well, what do you mean it has 4 criticals? Yeah, but that's test. I know. Can't you tell just by the name? It's test. Prod is more important. Pull it to the top. Why do I care about test? Like, you have to know this stuff. And then like there's a pause. I guess what you say makes sense. Okay, fine. like, really? You think?
That's very true. Yeah. No, it's interesting. Yeah. It's funny how people's mind is so wired in such a linear way, right? There's like in database technology, there's graph technology versus linear.
Yeah,
people's mind is linear, right? It's just linear.
You know that saying, right? The good guys operate in lists, the bad guys operate in graphs, And while that stays true, the bad guys will always win.
I love it. No, I didn't know it, but I like it.
That's the reality, right? You use Bloodhound as an attacker, and as a defender, you got a list of priorities, and you start from the top and you go to the bottom. There is no visual. This is the important one.
I like it. Yeah, I love it.
Oy.
Well, Dima, TJ, this has been, I mean, we could go on for hours if I didn't have a hard stop right now, but is there anything else you want to impart in the audience today, given the conversation that we just had?
TJ or me?
Both of you.
TJ, you go first.
I think actually, by the way, this was a fun discussion. I definitely enjoyed it totally. I think the most important thing that we can take out of this is maybe a couple of things. Actually, I would say one, go hug a developer. Like, find a developer next to you, give him a big ass hug, and say,
make sure they took a shower before you hug them.
Just make sure he takes a shower. That is a very valid point. See, that's thinking of a CISO, right? Taking all the
risk management.
Right. So, but give him a big hug and say, dude, you know what? I'm sorry. You know what? I don't get you. I don't understand you. I want to understand more about what your life looks like when I put something in. Tell me, what does that feel like, right? Do something in psychology, they call imago when you go to therapy, right? They call imago, which is listening to the other side. Do some imago with a developer. That would be my gift to the audience here at Audience First.
I would add one more thing. So Avid we got a bunch of developers, but that's not the main point. The main point is that Avid is a company that makes tools, both software and hardware, for creators, creative people. And until I joined Avid, I didn't understand what that meant. What is a creative person? And then I saw some creative people, and I'm like, wow, these are developers, except they're developing within a different medium, right? They're developing in music or in video. And I realized that a developer is not a regular techie. In fact, it's not a techie at all. Developer is a creator. It's a creative person. And creative people, if you put any constraints on a creative person, you will kill the creativity.
Exactly.
And that's why you have them, for this creativity. And just like with creative people in music and video, they will go bend over backwards. They will solder wire on top of chicken coos or whatever you want to do. They'll do whatever you ask just so you can create in peace.
I love it.
Now, if that means all other stuff doesn't top of it, but that's on us. But it's on us to remember that we're not trying to defend the barbarians. I mean, defend against the barbarians or stop anything. Well, you have to keep remembering that we are solo. The only job we have is to allow these creative, incredibly creative people that are very, very weird creative people create. And we don't need to understand them. We may not be able to understand them. We have to try and listen and hear them all the time and try to simplify their lives, oftentimes at the expense of ours, to make sure that they can do their thing still to create.
I love the analogy to creative media. Yeah, I love it.
The essence of Audience First. I love it.
There you go. Boom.
There you go. People over profits. There you go. TJ, Dima, this has been an absolute pleasure. Both of you are always invited to the show. I mean, you both are advocates, so I'm stoked. This has been another episode of Audience First. Thanks for joining. This episode of Audience First is proudly sponsored by Checkpoint Software, a leading provider of cybersecurity solutions to over 100,000 corporate enterprises and governments globally. Checkpoint Infinity's portfolio of solutions protects enterprises and public organizations from fifth-generation cyber attacks, with an industry-leading catch rate of malware, ransomware, and other threats. To learn more about Checkpoint and its Infinity portfolio, visit checkpoint.com.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Audience First. If you like what you've heard, feel free to follow or subscribe to Audience First on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast streamers.